Welcome back, guys. Today we'll be looking at the pound for pound kings throughout history that got completely and utterly destroyed when they were still the kings of the sport. Recently you had Canelo lose that title after losing to Bivol, but he wasn't taken apart. This list is only about the ones that got knocked out. Let's get started, but first give this video a like so we can satisfy that like-loving slut that is the algorithm. The first name on this list is Jose Napoles, who in the early 70s was ruling the welterweight division, getting the WBA, the WBC, and the ring titles from Curtis Coke, and then beating him again in the rematch, both times because Cokes didn't come out from the corner in the later rounds. He defended the belts twice against Emil Griffith and Ernie Lopez, earning him the pound for pound best in boxing after the Griffith fight. He then fought two non-title fights, which he won easily, before coming up against the immovable object that derailed his 1 year as the best boxer in the world, and that was Billy Backus, who quickly took him out in the 4th round. Napoles was an incredible boxer, and he just had a bad night as he came back and avenged his loss to Backus with a TKO in the 8th round before rattling off 10 straight victories where he defended his 3 titles 7 times, only losing to Carlos Monzon when he moved up a division and losing his last fight where he lost all the titles after another 4 successful defenses of the belts. Unfortunately, he never reclaimed the title as the best pound for pound fighter in the world, as by this time the heavyweight division had taken over the sport. The next man to take the crown right after Napoles was Smoking Joe Frazier, who got the nod as the pound for pound king in 1970 after getting the WBA and the WBC heavyweight titles from Jimmy Ellis. He kept the moniker as the best until 1973, where he rattled off incredible victories over Bob Foster, Muhammad Ali, Terry Daniels, and Ron Stander. It all came to an abrupt stop when he fought Big George Foreman, who dropped the hammer on Frazier, knocking him down 6 times in just 2 rounds.
Ali's trainer right next to me is saying it. You may hear him. Foreman is all over in the 1st round of Joe Frazier.
Joe Frazier had lost all his titles in just 2 destructive rounds. It was one of the worst defeats of a former champion, and the worst for a pound for pound king. Frazier tried to come back after this brutal loss, but he was never the same, losing against the greatest in Ali twice and against Foreman 1 more time. He lost 3 out of his last 6 fights. Big George Foreman dismantled the previous pound for pound best, so now it was his time to reign as the best. After getting all 3 belts from Frazier, Foreman was able to put up the belts and defend them against an average Jose Roman. But then beat a great boxer in Ken Norton in dominating fashion, beating him in just 2 rounds. His short 1-year reign ended on October 30th, 1974 in the fight known as the Rumble in the Jungle.
Drop that left hook. Has Ali in the corner. Ali does Foreman. Backs him up in his back. That was no phantom. That was no phantom punch.
George Foreman had finally met his match with Muhammad Ali. Ali had talked a ton of crap beforehand and also during the fight, and he completely backed it up by knocking out Foreman in only 8 rounds. Foreman was never able to get back the belts in his initial run in boxing, but he did get a title back 20 years after losing to Ali, becoming the oldest champion. Ali then got the title as the pound for pound king and didn't give it up for 4 years. Hands of Stone then took the mantle for a really short time before Ali got it back after avenging his loss to Spinks. But Duran got it back in the late 70s, getting the title after beating Wellington Wheatley and of course Sugar Ray Leonard. Unfortunately, this only lasted 5 months, as later in 1980, Duran and Leonard had a rematch in the famous No Mas fight.
And he does.
This loss didn't completely derail Duran's career, as he was able to get the titles 2 more times by beating Davey Moore and Iran Barkley. But he quickly lost them to the 3 other members of the 4 Kings in Thomas Hearns, Marvin Hagler, and Leonard 1 more time. Duran made it to the top twice, but quickly lost them, being known as the best for about 1.5 years. Sugar Ray Leonard picked up the baton as the best, but lost it after retiring due to an eye injury in 1982. And Hagler picked it up, but this guy was never dominated at any point in his career. Then came Mike Tyson's turn as the pound for pound king, after becoming the youngest heavyweight champion of all time in 1985. Tyson kept his reign going with 9 straight title defenses and being able to collect all the belts to become undisputed champion of the world. He was the king of boxing for 4 years, with a brief switch at the top with Leonard's return, before the fateful day where one of the biggest underdogs in history was able to pull out the win. Buster Douglas basically pulled a one-and-done performance where he was able to take the biggest hits from Tyson and get back up. He stood toe-to-toe against the most formidable opponent and was able to knock him out in the 10th round. Tyson never really returned to his glory, although he did capture 2 more titles, but quickly lost them to Holyfield. Next, Pernell Whitaker held the title for a short time before losing it to Julio Cesar Chavez, who held the title as the best for 3 years until 1993 after his stalemate with Whitaker, at which point Riddick Bowe and Holyfield took turns as the king, before passing it back to Whitaker, and it changed hands to Roy Jones Jr. and Oscar de la Hoya until late 1999. Felix Trinidad took the pound-for-pound best spot after defending the IBF welterweight title 15 times and unifying titles after beating Oscar de la Hoya. He went on to move up in divisions, conquering titles at super welterweight and middleweight divisions. But in 2001, he tried to unify the middleweight division and become undisputed by taking on Bernard Hopkins, but he was completely outclassed and outmatched.
Hopkins lands his own. Backseat off and watch the 2 fighters trade through the round. Oh, huge right hand. Huge right hand by...
Early on, the fight was really slow, but once Hopkins started to find his rhythm, he started to put on a boxing lesson on Trinidad, who started to fade in the later rounds after realizing that he was losing the fight. He was completely exhausted, while the ever-diligent and hard-working Hopkins looked fresh in the last round, where Trinidad went down. Hopkins took the title as the best, but after some inactivity, he lost it to the next one on this list. Roy Jones Jr. took the spot as the best boxer in the world in 2001. Jones was undisputed champion in the light heavyweight division, defending some or all of his belts a total of 5 times during this time, and even conquered a belt at heavyweight after beating John Ruiz. In 2003, he was barely able to beat Antonio Tarver by majority decision, so they had to have a quick rematch, and that's when everything came crashing down.
He's helped a lot of boxers down there to get a sustained attack against him.
Antonio Tarver was completely confident in himself and knew that he could beat the king after their fight was so close the first time around. He was able to shock the world in only the 2nd round by having one of the most destructive knockouts you will ever see. Jones was never the same after this fight, losing 7 more fights in his career, getting knocked out 4 more times. The pound-for-pound best spot has then changed hands between Hopkins again, Mayweather for a very long time, Pacquiao on and off, then Andre Ward for a time before retiring. Triple G took the mantle before losing it to Vasyl Lomanchenko, and then Canelo Alvarez, and now the current king, Usyk. You expect everybody to lose, but for the very best to lose in such a destructive fashion is always shocking. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time.